have to hold a mirror up in front of yourself to recognize yourself? The awareness is itself the I. Realize it, and that is the truth. Disciple, when I inquire into the origin of thoughts, there is the perception of the I, but it does not satisfy me. Bhagavan, quite right. Because this perception of I is associated with a form, perhaps with the physical body. Nothing should be associated with the pure self. The self is the pure reality in whose light the body,
Whew.
So I heard you need a fix. Yeah, they heard I got a cure. Now I got the medicine. And my veins are slow and pure. So I feel like heroin. Got his heartbeat through his shirt. Once a needle hit a bitch right to the dome, they alert. What they want from me, step me down and say a word. I'm a human being. They need till they hit his verb. Pretty lady, pretty soft. But I got it in my purse. Cause these pussy niggas running. About gon' hit them where it hurt. My little baby got me crazy. Said I like the way you were. Got that drive, got that passion. And I like the way she flirt. Feeling when I'm walking, they gon' say it's just like Meg.
What up?
All them niggas hating, they outdated.
Bro, I'm animating obviously, as you can see, I'm animating a transformation. And I'm not gonna lie, this motherfucker is gonna be very, very complex. Because it's like a reverse transformation. And because he's going from robot mode to vehicle mode. And bro, I'm just gonna keep it real. I don't fucking know how to do I don't know how to do whatchamacallit, like robot to vehicle. I can do vehicle to robot, but robot to vehicle is fucked. Like that shit is hard as hell. So what I do is I animate it backwards. And this one's kind of long. But you'll see. I'm about to vibe to some music. I'm about to vibe to some music. I might turn on an audiobook, but I'm just gonna really lock in and get in the flow state because honestly, this is really fun. Like I really love what I'm doing here. But this shit is crazy complicated. Like like I like it, but like bro, this shit be hurting the fuck out of my head, bro. Like on some real shit. Like this shit be frying my brain, bro. Like bro, but I like doing it. It's just I'm doing it live because bro, if I didn't do it live, I would be cooked in the fucking brain, bro. It's difficult. Like it's fairly, I can do it, but it's just difficult as fuck, bro. I'm just gonna lock in. Actually, you know what I want to hear? I want to hear
Keeping your eyes closed and lost to see. Keeping your eyes closed and lost to see. Keeping your eyes closed. Keeping your eyes closed and lost to see. Thanks, Yakri. Keeping your eyes closed. Keeping your eyes closed and lost to see. Hey, yo, Elon, what the fuck? Heavy on the pieces I create. Still say birds up the other way. Fall to my knees and up I pray. Grab on my head, ain't no wisdom today. Keeping your eyes closed and not sincere. Keeping your eyes closed and not sincere. Keeping your eyes closed. Keeping your eyes closed. My eyes open. My eyes open. My eyes open. Sweaty, I said my skin's rockin' wings. Let's be shattered, can't run
My brain is like cooking. Running some firefight. That's what's up. I need to get on firefight. I really like firefight, bro. I really like this shit. I do like me some firefight. Yo, I might have to run this one back a couple times. Yo, I'm gonna have to run that back a couple times, my nigga. Bro, I can't lie. This might be like one of my like favorite songs of like all time. Like all time. This is up there, bro. I don't know, bro. I'm so sweet, my wings stinging and call my love, call the feeling. About to keep us to take time to switch to my side. Also, I'm totally winging this, by the way.
kilo chain. She rock news for having fun. She got plots and afterwards. Me and you boxing after one. Me and her boxing in that bed. I'm at the box, I'm boxing out. They hit it on live, I'm constant that damn. I'm switching on my hair, flexing rest on they won't look, yeah. I'm putting hard organic by the book. I didn't hop up on my dick, I'ma get you by the hook, yeah. You don't wanna talk, you gon' taste it. Yes, you wanna take, make you famous. And I'm almost stay real Davis. No. I was running backwards, I got tired. Don't give a fuck no more, live up on the wire. I got heavy money, bitches in it prior. Ain't got no time to stop, I pop a head and I wire. You know I be all niggas like they dogs. Tear it up, I might touch this bitch up home. I'ma do something, I'ma do, I might just turn this bitch to stone. I'm not tryna talk, hey, I'm not tryna talk. Bitch don't wanna talk, she wanna taste. Trippin' on high, the glass one. Me from the right, gas one. I'm good with the sack, without one. She rock niggas without the gun.
Good God. Locked in. Good God.
Rogers about the 8 ball, the back from her ratio. I don't know her name, but I know she gon' fuck for herself. I'm dipped in that night, tell her cheese. Speezy and busy, go hand to hand. Tell her bitch, take it easy, I got some plan. Ease up off these, let me work my mind. I'm 6 shots deep and I feel like that. This underground rap shit ain't on top. You wanna be on the top, you gotta stay down low. And put the layers off the onion that we hear call out. I tell the pups to eat a dick, tell them maybe my eye. I got some high grade throat when we rolled up tight. And when I spark, you start punching like Kimbo Slice. Getting bread like the bimbo, man, all white. No crumbs left over, bitch, I clean up nice.
I'm trying to keep my composure started. I'm at these niggas on me, turn the corner, get to the market, don't you worry, niggas. So I'm home, I'm alone, think I'm head to the bone. Since I'm sad when I'm gone, I can't get to the phone.
Okay, now I'm finna hide this shit. Whoa, wait. I gotta hear this real quick. Excuse me? Okay. Okay, so that's gonna be kind of. Hold on, I'm like letting my brain like cook this shit up. It's a fucking Sprite. Oh, yo, I fucked it up. Yo, I fucked it up. I think I fucked it up. Wait a minute. Wait, I might be safe. No, fuck this camera. Fuck all these keyframes. Fuck all these keyframes need to go. No. We're good. I really just need to like redo the bro. Okay, so this is what's gonna happen.
Okay.
baby, that's gon' take a while. You don't know I gave my name, but best believe you feel my style. It's some hot shit, tight, burning toxic. You know I'm waiting for my turn, so why you pocket watching? Penny pinching, my jewelry from 50 on the market. Why you kiki in my face? You know your money target. Can't give you all the million, know I'm on the road, baby. Wanna drive me so crazy, I can't forgive empty pockets, know how to reach me. Tell the niggas send me a cash shot. It's some hot shit, tight, burning toxic. You know I'm waiting for my turn, so why you pocket watching? Penny pinching, my jewelry from 50 on the market. Why you kiki in my face? You know you're my next target. You know you're my next target, okay?
Good God. Bruh, where the fuck did, oh my god.
Told not to give it up, told to protect the woman, don't wait too long. He gon' get bored and he gon' screw. However, wherever, your best friend, your shelter don't matter. Boys will be boys, right? But I'm the bad guy when I say I got a dick bigger than you. It's supposed to come for you like mother handing you some tissues. Just off your sneakers and cook you some good food. Give your love babies pussy whenever you want to. Learn from my mother under my father's abuse. And when I gave niggas my all, it meant my innocence too. There's something they don't teach you in school. There's something game when you love you too. They all thought I was a jester, thought I was a fool. Now I got trips up my sleeve and go through my guy's room. I don't gotta be a mother, a wife, a daughter. I can be a lawyer, teacher, rapper, leave you niggas slaughtered. I can be the rich auntie, spoil all my brother's daughters. I ain't let no nigga touch me, what's surprise, I'm getting hotter. Can we all open our eyes for once? We got women acting deaf while men eat that up for lunch. Playing on the gun and double dutch on the corner while they smoking up they blacks and such. It's in the household, in the bloodline, in the family. Pull your shorts down, we got men over, they might get handsy. Might be your support, might offer you some candy, but can you keep a secret? That's just men being manly. I was told as a woman and a girl that when men push and shove you, that mean you're the whole world. As a I grew up hearing only half truths. I wanted all my power back, learn to conjure in the booth. It's a complex inferior to the trope that we women run the world. We give life to all of you. So not to give it up, so to protect the room, but don't wait too long. He gon' get bored and he gon' screw. However,
bro, this is like one of the most.
Don't matter, boys will be boys, right? But I'm the bad guy when I say I got a dick bigger than you. It's supposed to come for you like mother hand and you some 10 shoes. To stop your sneakers and to you some good food. Give your love, baby's pussy, whatever you want.
Oh shit, hold up.
From my mother under my father's abuse, and when I gave my all to niggas, man, my innocence too. Man, my innocence too. When I gave it all to niggas, man, my innocence too.
Okay, I gotta lock the
Ego
fucking
and all else shine. When all thoughts are still, pure consciousness remains over. Disciple, how did the ego arise? Here is a question that gives rise to endless philosophizing, but Bhagavan, holding rigorously to the truth of non-duality, refused to admit its existence. Bhagavan, there is no ego. If there were, you would have to admit of two selves in you. Therefore, there is no ignorance. If you inquire into the self, ignorance, which is already non-existent, will be found not to exist, and you will say that it is. Sometimes it seemed to the listener that absence of thought must mean a mere blank, and therefore Bhagavan specifically guarded against this. Absence of thought does not mean a blank. There must be someone to be aware of that blank. Knowledge and ignorance pertain only to the mind and are in duality, but the self is beyond them both. It is pure light. There is no need for one self to see another. There are no two selves. What is not the self is mere non-self and cannot see the self. The self has no sight or hearing. It lies beyond them, all alone as pure consciousness. Bhagavan often cited man as continued existence during deep, dreamless sleep as a proof that he exists independent of the ego and the body's sense. He also referred to the state of deep sleep as a body-free and ego-free state. Disciple, I don't know whether the self is different from the ego. Bhagavan, in what state were you in deep sleep? Disciple, I don't know. Bhagavan, who doesn't know? The waking self, but you don't deny that you existed while in deep sleep. Disciple, I was an ant, but I don't know who was in deep sleep. Bhagavan, exactly. The waking man says that he did not know anything in the state of deep sleep. Now he sees objects and knows that he exists, but in deep sleep there were no objects and no spectator. And yet the same person who is speaking now existed in deep sleep also. What is the difference between the two states? There are objects in the play of the senses now, while in deep sleep there were not. A new entity, the ego, has arisen. It acts through the senses, sees objects, confuses itself with the body, and claims to be the self. In reality, what was in deep sleep continues to be now also. The self is changeless. It is the ego which has come between. That which rises and sets is the ego. That which remains changeless is the self. Such examples sometimes gave rise to the mistaken idea that the state of realization or abundance in the self which Bhagavan prescribed was a state of nescience like physical sleep, and therefore he guarded against this idea also. Bhagavan, waking, dream, and sleep are mere phases of the mind, not of the self. The self is the witness of these three states. Your true nature exists in sleep. Disciple, but we are advised not to fall asleep during meditation. Bhagavan, it is stupor which you must guard against. That sleep which alternates with waking is not the true sleep. That waking which alternates with sleep is not the true waking. Are you awake now? No. What you have to do is to wake up to your true state. You should neither fall into false sleep nor remain falsely awake. Bhagavan, though present even in sleep, the self is not then perceived. It cannot be known in sleep straightaway. It must first be realized in the waking state, for it is our true nature underlying all the three states. Effort must be made in the waking state and the self realized here and now. It will then be understood to be the continuous self, uninterrupted by the alteration of waking, dream, and deep sleep. In fact, one name for the true state of realized being is the fourth state, existing eternally beyond the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. It is compared with the state of deep sleep, states like this, it is formless and non-dual. However, as the above quotation shows, it is far from being the same. In the fourth state, the ego merges in consciousness, as in sleep it does in unconsciousness. Death and rebirth. In nothing did Bhagavan show more clearly that theory has to be adapted to the understanding of the seeker than in the question of death and rebirth. For those who were capable of grasping pure, non-dual theory, he explained merely that the question does not arise, for if the ego has no real existence now, it has none after death either. Disciple, do a person's actions in this life affect him in future births? Bhagavan, are you born now? What do you think of future births? The truth is that there is neither birth nor death. Let him who is born think of death and palliatives for it. Disciple, is the Hindu doctrine of reincarnation right? Bhagavan, no definite answer is possible. Even the present incarnation is denied, for instance in the Bhagavad Gita. Disciple, isn't our personality beginningless? Bhagavan, find out first whether it exists at all, and after you have solved that problem, ask the question. Namalwar says, in ignorance, I took the ego to be the self, but with right knowledge the ego is not, and only you remain as the self. Both the non-dualists and the dualists agree on the necessity for self-realization. Attain that first and then raise other questions. Non-dualism or dualism cannot be decided on theoretical grounds alone. If the self is realized, the question will not arise. Whatever is born must die. Whatever is acquired must be lost. But were you born? You are eternally existent. The self can never be lost. Bhagavan, indeed, discouraged preoccupation with such questions, since they merely distract one from the real task of realizing the self here and now. Disciple, they say that we have the choice of enjoying merit or demerit after our death, that it depends on our choice which comes. Is that so? Bhagavan, why raise questions of what happens after death? Why ask whether you were born, whether you are reaping the fruits of your past karma, and so on? You will not raise such questions in a little while when you fall asleep. Why? Are you a different person now from the one you are when asleep? No, you are not. Find out why such questions do not occur to you when you are asleep. On occasion, however, Bhagavan did admit of a lower, contingent point of view for those who could not hold to the doctrine of pure non-dualism. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna first says to Arjuna in chapter 2 that no one was born, and then in chapter IV, there have been numerous incarnations, both of you and me. I know them, but you do not. Which of these two statements is true? The teaching varies according to the understanding of the listener. When Arjuna said that he would not fight against his relatives and elders in order to kill them and gain the kingdom, Sri Krishna said, "Not that these, you or I, were not before, are not now, nor will be hereafter. None was born, none has died, nor will it be so hereafter." He further developed this theme, saying that he had given instructions to the son and through him to Ikshvaku. And Arjuna queried how that could be, since he had been born only a few years back, while they lived ages ago. Then Sri Krishna saw his point of view and said, "Yes, there have been many incarnations of me and you. I know them all, but you do not. Such statements appear contradictory, but they are true according to the viewpoint of the questioner. Christ also said before Abraham was, I am. Just as in dreams, you wake up after several new experiences, so after death another body is found. Just as rivers lose their individuality when they discharge their waters into the ocean, and yet the waters evaporate and return as rain on the hills and back again through the rivers to the ocean, so also individuals lose their individuality when they go to sleep, but return again according to their previous innate tendencies. Similarly, in death also, being is not lost. Disciple, how can that be? Bhagavan, see how a tree grows again when its branches are cut off. So long as the life source is not destroyed, it will grow. Similarly, latent potentialities withdraw into the heart at death, but do not perish. That is how beings are reborn. Nevertheless, from the higher viewpoint, he would say, in truth there is neither seed nor tree, there is only being. He would occasionally explain in more detail, but still with the reservation that in reality there is only the changeless self. Disciple, how long is the interval between death and rebirth? Bhagavan, it may
Damn,
be
this one
long
might
or
take a
short,
couple
but
days,
a realized
bro.
man undergoes no such change. He merges into the infinite being, as is said in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Some say that those who, after death, take the path of light are not reborn, whereas those who take the path of darkness are born after they have reaped their karma self-made destiny in their subtle bodies. If a man's merits and demerits are equal, he is reborn immediately on earth. If the merits outweigh the demerits, his subtle body goes first to heaven, while if the demerits outweigh the merits, it goes first to hell. But in either case, he is later reborn on earth. All this is described in the scriptures, but in fact there is neither birth nor death. One simply remains what one really is. That only is the truth. Again, he would explain in terms of goddess mercy. Bhagavan, God in his mercy withholds this knowledge from people. If they knew that they had been virtuous, they would grow proud, and in the other case they would be despondent. Both are bad. It is enough to know the self. He did, however, refer sometimes to a person as preparedness or maturity as being due to the achievements of a previous incarnation. A competent person who has already, perhaps in a previous incarnation, qualified himself realizes the truth and abides in peace as soon as he hears it told to him just once, whereas one who is not so qualified has to pass through the various stages before attaining samadhi direct, pure consciousness of being. That is to say that a lifetime may be regarded as a day's journey upon the pilgrimage to self-realization. How far from the goal one starts depends on the effort or lack of effort made on the previous days. How far forward one advances depends on the effort of today. A science lecturer from a university asked whether the intellect survives a man's death and was told, "Why think of death? Consider what happens in your sleep. What is your experience of that?" Disciple, but sleep is transient, whereas death is not. Bhagavan, sleep is intermediate between two waking states, and in the same way death is intermediate between two births.
Yeah, I miss Halo 5 Warzone. That was
Both
probably
are transient.
my
Disciple,
favorite thing.
I mean, when the spirit is disembodied, does it carry the intellect with it, Bhagavan? The spirit is not disembodied, the bodies differ. If not a gross body, it will be a subtle one, as in sleep, dream, or daydream. Bhagavan would never admit that differences in mode of expression or formulation of doctrine between the various religions signified real contradiction, since the truth to which they point is one and immutable. Disciple, is the Buddhist view that there is no continuous entity answering to the idea of the individual soul right or not? Is this consistent with the Hindu doctrine of a reincarnating ego? Is the soul a continuous entity which reincarnates again and again, according to the Hindu doctrine?
Okay,
or
he's going to
is it
say
a
there
mere
is if you want there
conglomeration
to
of
be.
mental tendencies? Bhagavan, the real self is continuous and unaffected. The reincarnating ego belongs to a lower plane, that of thought. It is transcended by self-realization. Reincarnations are due to a spurious offshoot of being and are therefore denied by the Buddhists. The human state is due to a mingling of the sentient with the insentient. Sometimes it was not a question of reincarnation, but grieving over the death of a loved one. A lady who had come from North India asked Bhagavan whether it was possible to know the posthumous state of an individual. Bhagavan, it is possible, but why try? Such facts are only as real as the person who seeks them. Lady, the birth of a person and his life and death are real to us. Bhagavan, because you wrongly identify yourself with the body, you think of the other also as a body. Neither you nor he is the body. Lady, but from my own level of understanding, I regard myself and my son as real. Bhagavan, the birth of the I thought is a person's birth and its death is his death. After the I thought has arisen, the wrong identification with the body arises. Identifying yourself with the body makes you falsely identify others also with their bodies. Just as your body was born and grows and will die, so you think the other also was born, grew and died. Did you think of your son before he was born? The thought came after his birth and continues even after his death. He is your son only insofar as you think of him. Where has he gone? To the source from which he sprang. So long as you continue to exist, he does too. But if you cease to identify yourself with the body and realize the true self, this confusion will vanish. You are eternal and others also will be found to be eternal. Until this is realized, there will always be grief due to false values which are caused by wrong knowledge and wrong identification. On the death of King George V, 2 devotees were discussing the matter in the hall and seemed upset. Bhagavan said, "What is it to you who dies or is lost? Die yourself and be lost, becoming one with the self of all and the ego's extinction." And finally, about the importance of death. Religions stress the importance of the frame of mind in which a person dies and his last thoughts at death. But Bhagavan reminded people that it is necessary to be well prepared beforehand. If not, undesirable tendencies will rise up at death, too powerful to be controlled. Disciple, even if I cannot realize in my lifetime, let me at least not forget on my deathbed. Let me have a glimpse of reality at least at the moment of death, so that it may stand me in good stead in the future. Bhagavan, it is said in the Bhagavad Gita chapter VA that whatever is a person's last thought at death determines his next birth. But it is necessary to experience reality now, in this life, in order to experience it at death. Consider whether this present moment is any different from the last one at death and try to be in the desired state. Heart and head. This seems a suitable place to set forth the Maharshi's teaching about heart and head. He taught that the heart, not the head, is the true seat of consciousness. But by this he did not mean the physical organ at the left side of the chest, but the heart at the right. And by consciousness he did not mean thought, but pure awareness or sense of being. He had found this from his own experience to be the center of spiritual awareness, and then found his experience confirmed in some ancient texts. When his devotees were instructed to concentrate on the heart, it was this spiritual heart on the right that was referred to, and they also found it the center of an actual, almost physical vibration of awareness. However, he would also speak of the heart as equivalent to the self and remind them that in truth it is not in the body at all, but is spaceless. Disciple, why do you say that the heart is on the right when biologists have found it to be on the left? What authority have you? When no one denies that the physical organ is on the left, but the heart of which I speak is on the right. That is my experience, and I require no authority for it. Still, you can find confirmation of it in a Malayali book on Ayurveda and in the Sita Upanishad. Saying this, Bhagavan showed the quotation from the latter and quoted the text from the former. Sometimes, when asked, he referred also to the biblical text from Ecclesiastes. The wise man's heart is at the right hand, and the fool's heart is at the left. Disciple, why do we have a place such as the heart to concentrate on for meditation? Bhagavan, because you seek true consciousness. Where can you find it? Can you attain it outside yourself? You have to find it internally. Therefore, you are directed inward. The heart is the seat of consciousness or consciousness itself. I ask you to observe where the eye arises in your body, but it is not really quite correct to say that the eye arises from and merges in the chest at the right side. The heart is another name for reality, and this is neither inside nor outside the body. There can no in or out for it, since it alone is. I do not mean by heart any physiological organ, or any plexus or nerves or anything like that. But so long as a man identifies himself with the body or thinks he is in the body, he is advised to see where in the body the I thought arises and merges again. It must be the heart at the right side of the chest, since every man of whatever race and religion and in whatever language he may be speaking points to the right side of the chest to indicate himself when he says I. This is so all over the world, so that must be the place. And by keenly watching the emergence of the I thought on waking and its subsidence on going to sleep, one can see that it is in the heart on the right side. When a room is dark, you need a lamp
Good
to
God,
light.
bro.
But when the sun rises, there is no need for a lamp. Objects are seen without one. And to see the sun itself, no lamp is needed because it is self-luminous. Similarly with the mind. The reflected light of the mind is necessary to perceive objects, but to see the heart, it is enough for the mind to be turned towards it. Then the mind loses itself, and the heart shines forth. It is a tantric practice to concentrate on one of the chakras or spiritual centers of the body, very often on the point between the eyebrows. As will be shown in a later chapter, the heart on the right side is not one of these chakras. Nevertheless, in the following passage, Bhagavan explains concisely his teaching that concentration on the heart center is more effective than on any other point, but less effective than pure inquiry. Disciple, there are said to be 6 subtle organs of different colors in the chest, of which the spiritual heart is said to be the one situated 2 fingers' breadth to the right from the center. But the heart is also said to be formless. Does that mean that we should imagine it to have a form and meditate on this? Bhagavan, no, only the quest, who am I, is necessary. That which continues to exist throughout sleep and waking is the same being in both, but while waking there is unhappiness and therefore the effort to remove it. When asked who awakes from sleep, you say I. Hold fast to this I. If that is done, the eternal being reveals itself. The most important thing is the investigation of the I and not concentration on the heart center. There is no such thing as the inner and the outer. Both words mean the same or nothing at all. Nevertheless, there is also the practice of concentration on the heart center, which is a form of spiritual exercise. Only he who concentrates on the heart can remain aware when the mind ceases to be active and remains still, with no thoughts, whereas those who concentrate on any other center cannot retain awareness without thought, but only infer that the mind was still after it has become active again. In the following passage, an English lady remarks on this awareness without thought, and Bhagavan approves. Disciple, thoughts suddenly cease and I rises up equally suddenly and continues. It is only a feeling, not a thought. Can it be right? Bhagavan, yes, it is quite right. Thoughts have to cease and reason to disappear for the I to rise up and be felt. Feeling is the main thing, not reason. Disciple, moreover, it is not in the head, but at the right side of the chest. Bhagavan, that is where it should be, because the heart is there. Disciple, when I look outwards it disappears. What should I do? Bhagavan, hold fast to it. This does not mean that thought is impossible during the state of I consciousness, as indeed one can see from the example of Bhagavan himself, who is permanently in that state. For the ignorant person, thought is like a dense cloud overhead, shutting him off from the illumination of the sun. When the ceiling of cloud has been broken and rolled back, letting in the light, he can use thought without being imprisoned.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do this
to
live.
change the metaphor, Bhagavan sometimes compared the mind of the realized man to the moon in the sky in daytime. It is there, but its light is not needed, because one can see without it by the direct light of the sun. Suffering. One of the problems about which Bhagavan was often asked was suffering.
It's lagging so
The
much.
questions were usually personal rather than academic, since it was often the experience of grief which drove people to seek solace from him. The real solace came as a silent influence, but he did also answer theoretical questions. The usual answer was to bid the questioner find out who it is that suffers, just as he would bid the doubter find who it is that doubts. For the self is beyond suffering as it is beyond doubt. Sometimes, however, on a more contingent level, he would point out that whatever makes a person dissatisfied with his state of ignorance and turns him to the quest of the self is beneficial, and that it is often suffering which is the means of doing this. Bhagavan, the bliss of self is always yours, and you will find it if you seek it earnestly. The cause of your misery is not in your outer life, it is in you as your ego. You impose limitations on yourself, and then make a vain struggle to transcend them. All unhappiness is due to the ego. With it comes all your trouble. What does it avail you to attribute the cause of misery to the happenings of life when that cause is really within you? What happiness can you get from things extraneous to yourself? When you get it, how long will it last? If you would deny the ego and scorch it by ignoring it, you would be free. If you accept it, it will impose limitations on you and throw you into a vain struggle to transcend them. That was how the thief sought to ruin King Menaka. To be the self that you really are is the only means to realize the bliss that is ever yours. A very devoted and simple devotee had lost his only son, a child of 3. The next day he arrived at the ashramam with his family. Referring to them, Bhagavan said, "Training of mind helps one to bear sorrows and bereavements with courage, but the loss of one's children is said to be the worst of all griefs. Grief only exists as long as one considers oneself to have a definite form. If the form is transcended, one knows the oneself to be eternal. There is neither death nor birth. What is born is only the body, and this is the creation of the ego. But the ego is not ordinarily perceived without the body, and so is identified with it. It is thought that matters. Let the sensible man consider whether he knew his body while in deep sleep. Why then does he feel it in the waking state? Although the body was not felt in sleep, did not the self exist? What was his state when in deep sleep, and what is it now when awake? What is the difference? The ego rises up, and that is waking. Simultaneously thoughts arise. Find out who has the thoughts. Where do they come from? They must arise from the conscious self. Apprehending this even vaguely helps towards the extinction of the ego. The realization of the one infinite existence becomes possible. In that state there are no individuals but only eternal being. Hence there is no thought of death or grieving. If a man thinks that he is born, he cannot escape the fear of death. Let him find out whether he was ever born or whether the self takes birth. He will discover that the self always exists, and that the body which is born resolves itself into thought, and that the emergence of thought is the root of all mischief. Find where thought comes from, and then you will abide in the ever-present inmost self and be free from the idea of birth and fear of death. Disciple, if someone we love dies, it causes grief. Should we avoid such grief by either loving all alike or not loving at all? Bhagavan, if someone we love dies, it causes grief to the one who continues living. The way to get rid of grief is not to continue living. Kill the griever, and who will then remain to grieve? The ego must die. That is the only way. The two alternatives you suggest amount to the same. When all are realized to be the one self, who is there to love or hate? Sometimes, however, the questions were impersonal, referring not to some private tragedy, but to the evil and suffering in the world. In such cases, they were usually by visitors who did not understand the doctrine of non-duality or follow the path of self-inquiry. Visitor, widespread distress, such as famine and pestilence, spreads havoc through the world. What is the cause of this state of affairs? Bhagavan, to whom does all this appear? Visitor, that one do. I see misery all round. Bhagavan, you were not conscious of the world and its sufferings while asleep, but you are now that you are awake. Continue in the state in which you are not affected by such things. When you are not aware of the world, that is to say, when you remain as the self in the state of sleep, its sufferings do not affect you. Therefore turn inwards and seek the self, and there will be an end both of the world and of its miseries. Visitor, but that is selfishness. Bhagavan, the world is not external to you. Because you wrongly identify yourself with the body, you see the world outside you, and its suffering becomes apparent to you. But the world and its sufferings are not real. Seek the reality and get rid of this unreal feeling. This the visitor was unwilling to do, but instead referred again to suffering and to those who strive vainly to remove it. Visitor, there are great men and public workers who cannot solve the problem of suffering in the world. Bhagavan, that is because they are based on the ego. If they remained in the self, it would be different. Still, presuming the absolute reality of the objective world, the visitor now asked in an indirect way how it would be different, demanding that those who abide in the self should accept the unreal as real. Visitor, why don't Mahatmas help? For the moment, Bhagavan answers on the visitor's own level. Bhagavan, how do you know that they don't? Public speeches, outer activity, and material help are all outweighed by the silence of the Mahatmas. They accomplish more than others. Now the visitor comes to the practical point, outer activity instead of inner quest, and Bhagavan rejects that viewpoint no less categorically. Visitor, what can we do to ameliorate the condition of the world? Bhagavan, if you remain free from pain, there will be no pain anywhere. Trouble now is due to your seeing the world outside yourself and thinking there is pain in it. But both the world and the pain are within you. If you turn inwards, there will be no pain. Visitor, God is perfect. Why did he create the world imperfect? A work partakes of the nature of its author, but in this case it is not so. Bhagavan, are you something separate from God that you should ask this question? So long as you consider yourself the body, you see the world as external to you. It is to you that the imperfection appears. God is perfection and his work is also perfection, but you see it as imperfect because of your wrong identification with the body or the ego. Visitor, why did the self manifest as this miserable world? Bhagavan, in order that you might seek it. Your eyes cannot see themselves, but if you hold a mirror in front of them, they see themselves. Creation is the mirror. See yourself first, and then see the whole world as the self. Visitor, then what it amounts to is that I should always turn inwards. Bhagavan, yes. Visitor, shouldn't I see the world at all? Bhagavan, you are not told to shut your eyes to the world, but only to see yourself first and then see the whole world as the self. If you consider yourself as the body, the world appears to be external. If you are the self, the world appears as Brahman manifested. The trouble is that it is extremely difficult to regard the body or the objective world as unreal. Bhagavan admitted that in the following dialogue. Disciple, I have a toothache. Is that only a thought? Bhagavan, yes. Disciple, then why can't I think that there is no toothache and so cure myself? Bhagavan, one does not feel the toothache when one is absorbed in other thoughts or when asleep. Disciple, but still it remains. Bhagavan, so strong is man's conviction of the reality of the world that it is not easily shaken off. The world is no more real than the individual who sees it. Then a humorous exchange which illustrates the difficulty of the concept. Disciple, at present there is a Sino-Japanese war going on. If it is only in the imagination, can or will Sri Bhagavan imagine it not to be going on and so put an end to it? Bhagavan, laughing, the Bhagavan of the questioner, whom the questioner sees as an external being, is as much a thought of his as the Sino-Japanese war. Finally, a quotation which shows how Bhagavan sometimes answered on a more contingent plane, pointing out that it is suffering that makes a man discontented with the life of the ego and spurs him on to seek self-realization. Disciple, but why should there be suffering now? Bhagavan, if there were no suffering, how could the desire to be happy arise? If that desire did not arise, how could the quest of the self arise? Disciple, then is all suffering good? Bhagavan, yes. What is happiness? Is it a healthy and handsome body, regular meals, and so on? Even an emperor has endless troubles, although he may be in good health. So all suffering is due to the false notion I am the body. Getting rid of this is knowledge. Sin. Sin and evil of every kind are the result of egoism unrestrained by consideration for the injury caused to others or the deleterious effect on the sinner's own character. Religions guard against them by moral and disciplinary codes and emotional appeals, seeking to keep the ego within bounds and prevent its trespassing into forbidden places. However, the spiritual path that is so radical and direct as to deny the ego itself does not need to attend specifically to the various excesses of egoism. All egoism has to be renounced. Therefore, non-duality turns the attack of the ego itself, not on its specific manifestations. However sinful a person may be, if he would stop wailing inconsolably, "Alas, I am a sinner, how shall I attain liberation?" and casting away even the thought that he is a sinner, if he would zealously carry on meditation on the self, he would most assuredly get reformed. Similarly, a discipline which aims at transcending thought completely in realization of the super-rational self does not need to inveigh specifically against evil thoughts. All thoughts are distractions. An European lady asked whether good thoughts were not helpful in seeking realization, at any rate in the early stages, like the lower rungs of the ladder, and was told, "Yes, insofar as they keep off bad thoughts, but they themselves must disappear before the state of realization, because the quality of purity sattva is the real nature of the mind. Clearness like that of the unclouded sky is the characteristic of the mind expanse. Being stirred up by the quality of activity rajas, the mind becomes restless and influenced by darkness tamas, manifests as the physical world. The mind thus becoming restless on the one hand and appearing as solid matter on the other. The real is not disturbed. Just as fine silk threads cannot be woven with the use of a heavy iron shuttle, or the delicate shades of a work of art be distinguished in the light of a lamp flickering.
Okay.
So is realization of truth impossible with the mind rendered because truth is exceedingly subtle and serene. Mind will be cleared of its impurities only by a desireless performance of duties during the several births, getting a worthy master, learning from him, and incessantly practicing meditation on the Supreme. The transformation of the mind into the world of inert matter due to the quality of darkness tamas and its restlessness due to the quality of activity rajas will cease.
In the next 12 to 24 months, I believe America will endure an age of chaos.
Then the mind regains its subtlety and composure.
Okay, my brain is kind of cooking now.
Bliss of the self can manifest only in a mind rendered subtle and steady by assiduous meditation. He who experiences that bliss is liberated even while still alive. He did, of course, insist on the need for purity. Sometimes a visitor would complain that he was too weak to resist his lower tendencies and would simply be told to try harder. According to his temperament, he might be told to find who it is that has the lower tendencies or to trust in God. Disciple, I am a sinner and do not perform any religious duties. Shall I have a painful rebirth because of that? Bhagavan, why do you say you are a sinner? Faith in God is enough to save you from rebirth. Cast all your burden on him. In the Turvakakam it is said, though I am worse than a dog, you have graciously undertaken to protect me. The delusion of death and birth is maintained by you. Is it for me to sit and judge? Am I the Lord here? Almighty God, it is for you to roll me through many bodies or keep me fixed at your feet. Therefore have faith and that will save you. Disciple, there is more pleasure in meditation than in sensual enjoyment, and yet the mind seeks the latter and not the former. Why is that? Bhagavan, pleasure and pain are only aspects of the mind. Our essential nature is
the wing's about to
happiness,
come in clean
but
as
we have
fuck.
forgotten the self and imagine that the body or the mind is the self. It is this wrong identification that gives rise to misery. What is to be done? This tendency is very deep-rooted and has continued for many past births and so has grown strong. It will have to go before the essential nature, which is happiness, can be realized. And above all, not to create new vasanas or latent tendencies. Disciple, Swami, how can the grip of the ego be loosened? Bhagavan, by not adding new vasanas, bad habits to it. If the objective reality of the world be an illusion, then the evil in it is also an illusion, and the remedy is to turn inwards to the reality of the self. An American visitor, the secretary of Swami Yogananda, asked why there are good and evil in the world and was told, they are relative terms. There must be a subject to know the good and evil. That subject is the ego. It ends in the self. Or you can say that the source of the ego is God. This definition is probably more definite and understandable for you. God. Superficially, it might seem that the Maharshi's statements about God were inconsistent, since he would sometimes enjoin complete faith and submission to God and sometimes speak of God as unreal, but actually there was no inconsistency. It must always be remembered that the purpose of his exposition was not to propound a philosophy, but to give practical guidance on the spiritual path. Someone who could conceive of the non-dual self could understand that it was his own self, and the self of God, and of the world also, whereas one who clung to the apparent reality of his ego could understand the self only as the God who had created him. According to their needs, he explained. In this, as in other matters, he pointed out the uselessness of discussion. Following either path was useful, theorizing about them was not. All religions postulate the three fundamentals: the world, the soul, and God, but it is the one reality that manifests itself as these three. One can say, the three are really three only so long as the ego lasts. Therefore, to inhere in one's own being, when the ego is dead, is the perfect state. The world is real, no, it is mere illusory appearance. The world is conscious, no, the world is happiness, no. What use is it to argue thus? That state is agreeable to all wherein, having given up the objective outlook, one knows one's self and loses all notions either of unity or duality, of oneself and the ego. If one has formed oneself, the world and God will also appear to have form. But if one is formless, who is to see these forms, and how? Without the eye can any object be seen? The seeing self is the eye, and that eye is the eye of infinity. Brahman is not to be seen or known. It is beyond the threefold relationship of seer, sight, and seen, or knower, knowledge, and known. The reality remains ever as it is. The existence of ignorance or the world is due to our illusion. Neither knowledge nor ignorance is real. What lies beyond them, as beyond all other pairs of opposites, is the reality. It is neither light nor darkness, but beyond both, though we sometimes speak of it as light and of ignorance as its shadow. When there was genuine search for understanding, Bhagavan would explain in some details, always leading the seeker back to the doctrine of the oneself. Mr. Thompson, a very quiet young gentleman who has been staying in India for some years and studying Hindu philosophy as an earnest student, asked, Srimad Bhagavad Gita says, I am the proper Brahman. In another place it says, I am in the heart of each one. Thus the different aspects of the ultimate principle are revealed. I take it that there are three aspects, namely, the transcendental, the immanent, and the cosmic. Is realization to be in any of these or in all of them? Coming to the transcendental from the cosmic, Vedanta discards the names and forms as being Maya. Again, Vedanta also says that the whole is Brahman, as illustrated by gold and ornaments of gold. How are we to understand the truth? Bhagavan, the Gita says, Brahmano hai pradishtaham, that ahem is known, the whole is known. Disciple, that is the immanent aspect only. Bhagavan, you now think that you are an individual. Outside you there is the universe, and beyond the universe is God. So there is the idea of separateness. The idea must go, for God is not separate from you or the cosmos. The Gita also says, I am the Self, O Gudeksa, seated in the heart of all beings. I am the beginning and the middle and also the end of all beings. Thus God is not only in the heart of all, He is the prop of all. He is the source of all, their abiding place and their end. All proceed from Him, have their stay in Him, and finally resolve into Him. Therefore He is not separate. Disciple, how are we to understand the line in the Gita? This whole cosmos forms a particle of me. Bhagavan, it does not mean that a small particle of God separates from Him and forms the universe. His Shakti is acting, and as a result of one phase of such activity, the cosmos has become manifest. Similarly, the statement in Purusha Sukta, Padasya Viswabhutani, all beings form one of his parts, does not mean that Brahman is in 4 parts. Disciple, I understand that. Brahman is certainly not divisible. Bhagavan, so the fact is that Brahman is all and remains indivisible. He is ever realized. However, man does not know this, and it is just what he has to know. Knowledge means overcoming the obstacles which obstruct the revelation of the eternal truth that the self is the same as Brahman. The obstacles taken altogether form your idea of separateness as an individual. Therefore, the present attempt will result in the truth being revealed that the self is not separate from Brahman. Christians, except for the greatest mystics, cling to the idea of a permanently real and separate ego. Sri Bhagavan had a discussion on this point with the Jesuit father, but it remained inconclusive. Bhagavan trying to turn the father's mind inwards to self-inquiry, and the father demanding a theoretical exposition instead. Dr. Emil Gathier, professor of philosophy at the Sacred Heart College, Shenbaganer, Kodaikanal, asked, "Can you kindly give me a summary of your teachings?" Bhagavan, they are found in the booklets, particularly in Who Am I? Disciple, I shall read them. But may I have the central point of your teaching from your own lips? Bhagavan, the central point is just the thing. Disciple, it is not clear to me what you mean by that. Bhagavan, that you should find the center. Disciple, I come from God. Isn't he God distinct from me? Bhagavan, who asks this question? God does not. You do. So find who you are, and then you may find out whether God is distinct from you. Disciple, but God is perfect and I am imperfect. How can I ever know him fully? Bhagavan, God does not say so. It is you who ask the question. After finding out who you are, you may know what God is. Disciple, but you have found yourself. Please let us know if God is distinct from you. Bhagavan, it is a matter of experience. Each one must experience it for himself. Disciple, oh, I see. God is infinite and I am finite. I have a personality which can never merge into God. Isn't he that so? Bhagavan, infinity and perfection do not admit of parts. If a finite being is apart from infinity, the perfection of infinity is marred. Thus your statement is a contradiction in terms. Disciple, no, see, there is both God and creation. Bhagavan, how are you aware of your personality? Disciple, I have a soul. I know it by its activities. Bhagavan, did you know it in deep sleep? Disciple, the activities are suspended in deep sleep. Bhagavan, but you exist in sleep and you do now too. Which of these two is your real state? Disciple, sleep and waking are mere accidents. I am the substance behind the accidents. He looked up at the clock and said that it was time for him to catch the train. He left after thanking Sri Bhagavan. So the conversation ended abruptly. The following talk takes up various problems which plague philosophers and theologians: divine omniscience and free will, natural laws and divine activity, personal God and impersonal, and yet the tone of the answer shows that Bhagavan considers it of rather secondary importance. Disciple, what is the relation between my free will and the overshadowing might of the omnipotent? Is the omnipotence of God consistent with the ego as free will? Is the omniscience of God consistent with the ego as free will? See, are natural laws consistent with God as free will? Bhagavan, yes. Free will is the present appearing to a limited faculty of sight and will. That same ego sees its past activity as falling into a course of law or rules, its own free will being one of the links in the course of law. The omnipotence and omniscience of God are then seen by the ego to have acted through the appearance of his own free will. So he comes to the conclusion that ego must go by appearances. Natural laws are manifestations of God's will, and they have been laid down. The following dialogue is characteristic as showing refusal to discuss theory and insistence on the need for practice. Disciple, is God personal? Bhagavan, yes, he is always the first person, the I, ever standing before you. Because you give precedence to worldly things, God appears to have receded to the background. If you give up all else and seek him alone, he will remain as the I, the self. Disciple, the final state of realization is said, according to Advaita, to be absolute union with the divine, and according to Visishtadvaita, a qualified union, while Dvaita maintains that there is no union at all. Which of these should be considered the correct view? Bhagavan, why speculate about what will happen at some time in the future? All are agreed that the I exists. To whichever school of thought he may belong, let the earnest seeker first find out what the I is. Then, it will be time enough to know what the final state will be, whether the I will get merged in the Supreme Being or stand apart from him. Let us not forestall the conclusion, but keep an open mind. Disciple, but will not some understanding of the final state be a helpful guide even to the aspirant? Bhagavan, no purpose is served by trying to decide now what the final state of realization will be. It has no intrinsic value. Disciple, why not? Bhagavan, because you proceed on a wrong principle. Your conclusion is arrived at by the intellect, which shines only by the light it derives from the self. Is it not presumptuous on the part of the intellect to sit in judgment over that from which it derives its little light? How can the intellect, which can never reach the self, be competent to ascertain and much less decide the nature of the final state of realization? It is like trying to measure the sunlight at its source by the standard of the light given by a search for the truth that is ever within you. Sometimes questions were also asked about the multiple gods of Hinduism.
The AUSLCTR gave me a full year so I could come
Yeah, I
to
might
work
have
every
to
day
split this up
and
into
make a
some
difference in
days.
children's lives.
I'll work on this for another 36
In this
minutes
connection, it should be explained that Hindus, like Christians or Muslims, worship the one God. Some of the questions about God recorded above were put by Hindus. However, they also worship God manifested in various forms, one possibility or name or form or viewpoint not negating another. Disciple, why are so many gods mentioned? Bhagavan, the body is only one, but how many functions are performed by it? The source of all these functions is one. It is the same with the gods. It would sometimes be asked whether the various gods and their heavens were real. But such a question starts from the presumption of the reality of this physical world and the questioner's body, a presumption which Bhagavan would not admit. Instead, he would turn this question, like all others, to the quest for reality. Disciple, are the gods Ishvara and Vishnu and their heavens, Kailas and Vaikuntha, real? Bhagavan, as real as you are in this body. Disciple, I mean, have they got a phenomenal existence like my body, or are they pure fictions like the horns of a hare? Bhagavan, they do exist. Disciple, if so, they must be somewhere. Where are they? Bhagavan, in you. Disciple, then they're only my idea, something which I create and control. Bhagavan, everything is. Disciple, but I can create a pure fiction like the horns of a hare, or a partial truth like a mirage, while there are also facts which exist irrespective of my imagination. Do the gods Ishvara and Vishnu exist like that? Bhagavan. Yes. Disciple. Is God subject to cosmic dissolution at the end of a cycle? Bhagavan. Why should he be? A man who realizes the self transcends cosmic dissolution and is liberated. Why should not Ishvara, God, who is infinitely wiser and abler than a man? Disciple. Do gods and devils also exist? Bhagavan. Yes. Disciple. How are we to conceive of supreme divine consciousness?
What?
Bhagavan, as that which is. Particularly interesting are the questions asked by a Muslim professor about the hymns which Bhagavan wrote to God in the form of Arunachala. Disciple, I have been reading the 5 hymns. I find that the hymns are addressed by you to Arunachala. But you are a non-dualist, so how can you address God as a separate being? Bhagavan, the devotee, God, and the hymns are all the self. Disciple, but you are addressing God. You are specifying this Arunachala hill as God. Bhagavan, you can identify the self with the body, so why shouldn't he, the devotees, identify the self with Arunachala disciple? If Arunachala is the self, why should it be specifically picked out among so many other hills? God is everywhere. Why do you specify him as Arunachala? Bhagavan, what has attracted you from Allahabad to this place? What has attracted all these people around? Disciple, Sri Bhagavan. Bhagavan, how was I attracted here? By Arunachala. The power cannot be denied. Again, Arunachala is within and not without. The self is Arunachala. Disciple, several terms are used in the holy books. Atman, Paramatman, Para, etc. What is the gradation among them? Bhagavan, they mean the same to the user of the words, but they are understood differently by various persons according to their development. Disciple, but why do you use so many words to mean the same thing? Bhagavan, it depends on the circumstances. They all mean the self. Para means not relative or beyond the relative, that is to say the absolute. Bhagavan would often make remarks which the superficial critic might take to be agnostic or atheistic, just as has been done by superficial critics of the Buddha. For instance, he might say, why worry about God? We do not know whether God exists, but we know that we exist, so first concentrate on yourself. Find out who you are. There was no agnosticism since Bhagavan, like the Buddha, spoke from perfect knowledge. He was simply placing himself in the position of the questioner and advising him to concentrate rather on what he knew than what he merely believed in. Sometimes he would tell people not to trouble whether there is God or whether realization implies unity with God or not, but simply to strive to realize the self, and when that was achieved they would know. Theorizing about it would not help them. The Malayalam version of Aladu Narpadu 40 verses was read out by a devotee for the benefit of a visitor. After hearing it, the latter asked, what about the reference to duality during 1S effort and unity at the end? Bhagavan, it refers to people who think one must begin 1S spiritual striving with a dualistic idea. They say that there is God, and that one must worship and meditate until ultimately the individual merges into God. Others say that the individual and the Supreme Being always remain separate and never merge. But let's not worry now about what happens at the end. All agree that the individual exists now. So let a man discover it, that is, discover his self. There will be time enough afterwards to find out whether the self is to merge in the Supreme or is a part of it or remains separate. Let us not forestall the conclusion. Keep an open mind, dive within and find the self. The truth will dawn upon you all right, so why try to decide beforehand whether it is absolute or qualified unity or duality? There is no meaning in doing so. Your decision would have to be made by logic and intellect, but the intellect derives its light from the self, the highest power, so how can its reflected and partial light envisage the entire and original light? The intellect cannot attain to the self.
I'm trying to think
so
about
how
like the
can it
hand.
ascertain its nature? While explaining to an American lady, Bhagavan said, "The self alone is real. All else is unreal. The mind and intellect have no existence apart from you. The Bible says, 'Be still and know that I am God.' Stillness is the only thing needed to realize that I am is God." Later he added, "The whole Vedanta is contained in the two biblical statements, 'I am that I am,' and 'Be still and know that I am God.'" For one who found self-inquiry too difficult, he would recommend worship and submission. Disciple, what should one think of when meditating? Bhagavan, what is meditation? It is the suspension of thoughts. You are perturbed by thoughts which rush one after another. Hold on to one thought so that others are expelled. Continuous practice gives the necessary strength of mind to engage in meditation. Meditation differs according to the degree of advancement of the seeker. If one is fit for it, one can hold directly to the thinker, and the thinker will automatically sink into his source, which is pure consciousness. If one cannot directly hold on to the thinker, one must meditate on God, and in due course the same individual will have become sufficiently pure to hold on to the thinker and sink into the absolute being. In case the path of worship was chosen, he demanded absolute surrender. Disciple, God is described as manifest and unmanifest. As the former, he is said to include the world as a part of his being. If that is so, we, as part of the world, should find it easy to know him in his manifested form. Bhagavan, know yourself before you seek to know the nature of God in the world.
This.
Disciple, does knowing myself imply knowing God? Bhagavan, yes, God is within you. Disciple, then what stands in the way of my knowing myself or God? Bhagavan, your wandering mind and perverted ways. Disciple, I am a weak creature. But why does not the superior power of the Lord within remove the obstacles? Bhagavan, yes, he will if you have the aspiration. Disciple, why should he not create the aspiration in me? Bhagavan, then surrender yourself.
Bro, how do you turn off Snap?
If I surrender myself, is no prayer to God necessary? Bhagavan, surrender itself is a mighty prayer. Disciple, but is it not necessary to understand his nature before one surrenders oneself? Bhagavan, if you believe that God will do all the things that you want him to do, then surrender yourself to him. Otherwise, let God alone and know yourself. If there be true surrender, there can be no complaint or frustration. Disciple, we are worldly people and are afflicted by some grief that we cannot get over. We pray to God and are still not satisfied. What should we do? Bhagavan, trust God. Disciple, we surrender but still there is no help. Bhagavan, but if you have surrendered, it means that you must accept the will of God and not make a grievance of what may not happen to please you. Things may turn out differently from what they appear. Distress often leads people to faith in God. Disciple, but we are worldly people. We have wife, children, friends, and relations. We cannot ignore them and resign ourselves to the divine will without retaining some trace of individuality. Bhagavan, that means that you have not really surrendered as you say you have. All you need to do is to trust God. Following the path of devotion, one should leave everything to God. The Lord bears the burden of the world. Know that the spurious ego which presumes to bear that burden is like a sculptured figure at the foot of a temple tower which appears to sustain the tower's weight. Whose fault is it if the traveler, instead of putting his luggage in the cart which bears the load anyway, carries it on his head, to his own inconvenience. There cannot even be impatience for speedy realization. To one who is so afflicted, he replied, surrender to him and accept his will whether he appears or vanishes. Await his pleasure. If you want him to do as you want, it is not surrender but command. You cannot ask him to obey you and yet think you have surrendered. He knows what is best and when and how to do it. Leave everything entirely to him. The burden is his and you have no more cares. All your cares are his. That is what is meant by surrender. Even prayer can betoken a lack of trust, and Bhagavan did not normally encourage prayer in the sense of petition. They pray to God and finish with, thy will be done. If his will be done, why do they pray at all? It is true that the divine will prevails at all times and under all circumstances. Individuals cannot act their own accord. Recognize the force of the divine will and keep quiet. Everyone is looked after by God. He created all. You are only one among 2,000 millions. When he looks after so many, will he omit you? Even common sense dictates that one should accept his will. There is no need to tell him your requirements. He knows them himself and will look after them. On other occasions, however, he would confirm the efficacy of prayer. As in other matters, he would put the viewpoint which would best help the spiritual development of the particular questioner. Disciple, are our prayers granted? Bhagavan, yes, they are granted. No thought will ever go in vain. Every thought will produce its effect some time or other. Thought force will never go in vain. It will be seen that this hints at a doctrine far wider than personal response by an anthropomorphic God. It indicates the general power of thought for good or evil and its repercussions on the thinker. Understanding of this involves a great responsibility for thoughts no less than for actions, just as Christ indicated that to look at a woman lustfully was a sin, the same as committing adultery with her. The following passage shows how far this teaching was from any humanized conception of a God. Not from any desire, resolve, or effort on the part of the rising sun, but merely due to the presence of his rays. The lens emits heat, the lotus blossoms, water evaporates, and people attend to their various duties in life. In the proximity of the magnet, the needle moves. Similarly, the soul or jiva is subjected to the threefold activity of creation, preservation, and destruction, which takes place merely due to the unique presence of the Supreme Lord, performs acts in accordance with its karma,
Come
and
on.
subsides to rest after such activity. But the Lord himself
Shit,
has no
frozen.
resolve. No act or event touches even the fringe of his being. This state of immaculate aloofness can be likened to that of the sun, which is untouched by the activities of life, or to that of the all-pervasive ether, which is not affected by the interaction of the complex qualities of the other four elements. Religions. It should be clear from what we said in previous section that Bhagavan's teaching was not opposed to any religion. If philosophers or theologians wish to argue whether the human soul was permanently and essentially separate from the divine being, he would refuse to join issue with them but try to turn them to spiritual effort instead, as for instance in his talk with the Jesuit priest on Page. When they attained realization they would know, and theoretical knowledge without realization would not help them anyway. Strictly speaking, Bhagavan was not exclusively a Hindu or subject to Hindu ritual, since Hinduism recognizes that one who is established in constant, conscious identity with the self is above all religions. He is the mountain peak towards which the various paths converge. Bhagavan had many followers who were not Hindus, Christians, Muslims, Parsis, and others, and none was ever recommended to change his religion. A religion involves two modes of activity, what might be called the horizontal and the vertical. Horizontally, it harmonizes and controls the life of the individual and society in conformity with its faith and morality, giving opportunity and incentive for a good life leading to a good death. Vertically, it provides spiritual paths for those who strive to attain a higher state or realize the ultimate truth during this life on earth. Horizontally, religions are mutually exclusive, but not really contradictory. Bhagavan was concerned rather with the vertical mode, the paths to realization, and therefore his teaching clashed with no religion. He guided those who would follow him on the most direct and central path, the quest of the self, and for this any religion could serve as a foundation. He approved of every religion, and if some devotees came to him who followed no formal religion, he did not insist they should do so. When asked about the different religious practices, he would stress their deeper meaning, and about different religions their basic unity. Disciple, what is yoga? Bhagavan, yoga union is necessary for one who is in a state of yoga separation. But really there is only one.
For anyone who doesn't speak another language, you've got to try Duolingo. Did you know more than half the world's population speaks more than one language? Duolingo has cracked the code.
If you realize the self, there will be no difference. Disciple, is there any efficacy in bathing in the Ganges? Bhagavan, the Ganges is within you. Bathe in this Ganges. It will not make you shiver with cold. Disciple, should we sometimes read the Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavan, always. Disciple, may we read the Bible? Bhagavan, the Bible and the Gita are the same. Disciple, the Bible teaches that man is born in sin. Bhagavan, man is sin. There is no feeling of being man is deep sleep. The body thought brings out the idea of sin. The birth of thought itself is sin. Disciple, the Bible says that the human soul may be lost. Bhagavan, the I thought is the ego and that is lost. The real I is I am that I am. The doctrine of the Trinity was explained. God the Father is equivalent to Ishwara, God the Son to the Guru, and God the Holy Ghost to the Atman. Isvara Gurat Medi Murti Beta Vibhajan Vimavad Vyaptadaya Dakshinamurte Nama means that God appears to his devotee in the form of a Guru, Son of God, and points out to him the immanence of the Holy Spirit. That is to say that God is Spirit, that this Spirit is immanent everywhere, and that the self must be realized, which is the same as realizing God. He protested against being satisfied with formal heavens, whether Hindu or any other, because so long as there is form there remains seer, sight and seen, and not the one self. Disciple, there is a short account of the spiritual experiences of St. Teresa in the March number of Prabhupada Bharata. She was devoted to a figure of the Madonna which became animated to her sight, and she was in bliss. Is this the same as Saktapada? Bhagavan, the animated figure indicates the depth of meditation Dhyana-bala. Saktapada prepares the mind for introversion. There is a process of concentration of the mind on one's own shadow which in due course becomes animated and answers questions put to it. That is due to strength of mind or depth of meditation. Whatever is external is also transitory. Such phenomena may produce joy for the time being, but abiding peace shanti does not result. That is got only by the removal of avidya ignorance. Disciple, can we see God in concrete form? Bhagavan, yes. God is seen in the mind. A concrete form may be seen, but still it is only in the devotee's mind. The form and appearance in which God manifests are determined by the mind of the devotee, but that is not the ultimate experience. There is a sense of duality in it. It is like a dream or vision. After God is perceived, self-inquiry begins, and that leads to realization of the self. Self-inquiry is the ultimate road. Sometimes his answers were cryptic and epigrammatical. The same universal truth is to be found in them. Their rather prickly form may reflect the aggressive manner of the questioner. Question: what is the best of all religions? What is Bhagavan's method? Bhagavan: all methods and religions are the same. Question: but different methods are taught for attaining liberation. Bhagavan: why should you be liberated? Why not remain as you are now? Question: I want to get rid of pain. To be rid of pain is said to be liberation. Bhagavan: that is what all religions teach. Question: but what is the method? Bhagavan: go back the way you came. Asterisk question: where did I come from? Bhagavan: that is just what you have to find out. Did these questions arise when you were asleep, and yet you existed then? Were you not the same person? Question: yes, I existed in sleep. So did the mind. But the senses had merged so that I could not speak. Bhagavan: are you the individual? Are you the mind? Did the mind announce itself to you when you were asleep? Question: no. But the authorities say that the individuality is different from God. Bhagavan: never mind about God. Speak for yourself. Question: what about myself? Who am I? Bhagavan: that is just what you have to find out. Then you will know everything. If you do not, it will be time enough to ask then. Question: when I wake, I see the world and I am not changed at all. Bhagavan: but you do not know this when asleep, and yet you exist in both states. Who has changed now? Is it your nature to change or to remain unchanging? Question: what is the proof? Bhagavan: does one require proof of one's own being? Only remain aware of yourself and all else will be known. Question: why then do the dualists and non-dualists quarrel among themselves? Bhagavan: if each would attend to his own business of seeking realization, there would be no quarrel. Spiritual experience may be differently expressed because some form must be given to the formless in order to express them at all, but essentially they are the same. Disciple: is the experience of the highest state the same to all, or is there any difference? Bhagavan: the highest state is the same and the experience is the same. Disciple: but I find some difference in the interpretation given of the highest truth. Bhagavan: the interpretations are made with the mind. The minds are different, so the interpretations also differ. Disciple: I mean to say that the seers express themselves differently. Bhagavan: their modes of expression may differ according to the nature of the seekers for whose guidance they are intended. Disciple: one speaks in terms of Christianity, another of Islam, a third of Buddhism, etc. Is that due to their upbringing? Bhagavan: whatever may be their upbringing, their experience is the same. Only the modes of expression differ according to circumstances. So also with different paths or schools within a religion. Disciple: different teachers have set up different schools and proclaimed different truths and so confused people. Why? Bhagavan: they have all taught the same truth but from different standpoints. Such differences were necessary to meet the needs of different minds differently constituted, but they all reveal the same truth. Disciple: since they have recommended different paths, which is one to follow? Bhagavan: you speak of paths as if you were somewhere in the self somewhere else and you had to go and attain it. But in fact the self is here and now and you are it always. It is like being here and asking people the way to Ram and Ashraman, and then complaining that each one shows a different path and asking which to follow. While confirming the various religions, Bhagavan at the same time urged people to get beyond them to the one self. Paul Brunt, an author of A Search in Secret India, asked him about the various doctrines of heaven and hell. Disciple, why do religions speak of gods, heaven, hell, etc.? Bhagavan, only to make people realize that they are on a par with this world and that the self alone is real. The religions are according to the viewpoint of the seeker. Take the Bhagavad Gita for instance. When Arjuna said that he would not fight against his own relations and elders in order to kill them and gain the kingdom, Sri Krishna said, "Not that these, you or I were not before, are not now, nor will be hereafter. None was born, none has died, nor will it be so hereafter," and so on. Later, as he developed the theme and declared that he had given the same instruction to the sun, through him to Ikshvaku, etc., Arjuna raised the doubt. How can that be? You were born a few years ago. They lived ages ago. Then Sri Krishna, understanding Arjuna's standpoint, said, "Yes, there have been many incarnations of myself in yourself. I know them all, but you do not." Such statements appear contradictory, but still both are right according to the point of view of the questioner. Christ also declared before Abraham was, "I am." Disciple, what is the purpose of such descriptions in religion? Bhagavan, only to establish the reality of the self. Disciple, Bhagavan always speaks from the highest standpoint. Bhagavan, smiling, people will not understand the bare and simple truth, the truth of their everyday, ever-present and eternal experience. That is the truth of the self. Is there anyone not aware of the self? Yet they do not even like to hear of it, whereas they are eager to know what lies beyond. Heaven and hell and reincarnation. Because they love mystery and not the plain truth, religions pamper them, only to bring them round to the self in the end. Moreover, much as you may wonder, you must return ultimately to the self, so why not abide in the self here and now? A passage was quoted above in which the questioner was recommended to read the Gita or the Bible constantly, and yet on other occasions people were reminded that their scriptures also have to be superseded. All the scriptures are meant only to make a man retrace his steps to his original source. He need not acquire anything new. He only has to give up false ideas and useless accretions. Instead of doing this, however, he tries to grasp something strange and mysterious because he believes his happiness lies elsewhere. That is the mistake. All scriptures without exception proclaim that for attaining salvation, the mind should be subdued. And once one knows that control of the mind is their final aim, it is futile to make an interminable study of them. What is required for such control is actual inquiry into oneself by self-interrogation. Who am I? How can this inquiry in quest of the self be made by means of a studying of the scriptures? One should realize the self by the eye of wisdom. Does Rama need a mirror to recognize himself as Rama? That to which I refers is within the 5 sheets, whereas the scriptures are outside them. By summarily rejecting even the 5 sheets. To inquire who am I, that is in bondage, and to know one's real nature alone is liberation. To keep the mind constantly turned within, and to abide thus in the self is alone Atmavichara self-inquiry, whereas dhyana meditation consists in fervent contemplation of the self as Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss. Indeed, at some time one will have to forget everything that has been learnt. The realized man stands forth as that to which all the attributes enumerated by the scriptures refer. To him, therefore, these sacred texts are of no use whatever. Chapter 2. From Theory to Practice. As was shown in the previous chapter, the theory that the Maharshi taught was intended only to serve as a basis for practice. However, the demand for practice brought in another branch of theory, that of free will or predestination, since people were not lacking who asked why they should make any effort if everything was predestined, or if all men returned to their source in any case. A visitor from Bengal said, Shankara says that we are all free, not bound, and that we shall all return to God from whom we came like sparks from a fire. If that is so, why should we not commit all sorts of sins? Bhagavan's reply showed him that that cannot be the point of view of the ego. Bhagavan, it is true that we are not bound. That is to say, the real self has no bondage. And it is true that you will eventually return to your source. But meanwhile, if you commit sins, as you call them, you have to face the consequences. You cannot escape them.
Fucking ad.
If a man beats you, can you say, I am free? I am not affected by the beating and feel no pain. Let him continue beating. If you can really feel that, then you can do what you like. But what is the use of just saying in words that you are free? Bhagavan did sometimes make pronouncements which seemed superficially like affirmations of complete predestination. When he left home in his youth, already established in self-realization, his mother sought and at last found him. He was maintaining silence at that time. Therefore, on her request to return home with her, he wrote out his reply instead of replying verbally. The ordiner controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prarabdha karma destiny to be worked out in this life, resulting from the balance sheet of actions in past lives. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen, do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent. He sometimes also made such statements to devotees. All the activities that the body is to go through are determined when it first comes into existence. It does not rest with you to accept or reject them. The only freedom you have is to turn your mind inward and renounce activities there. With reference to Bhagavan's reply to Miss Desai on the evening of January, I asked him, are only the important events in a man's life, such as his main occupation or profession, predetermined, or are trifling acts also, such as taking a cup of water or moving from one part of the room to another? Bhagavan, everything is predetermined. Aye, then what responsibility, what free will has man? Bhagavan, why does the body come into existence? It is designed for the various things that are marked out for it in this life. As for freedom, a man is always free not to identify himself with the body and not to be affected by the pleasures and pains consequent on its activities. Actually, however, the question of free will or predestination does not arise at all from the point of view of non-duality. It is as though a group of people who had never heard of radio were to stand round a wireless set arguing whether the man in the box has to sing what the transmitting station tells him to or whether he can change parts of the songs. The answer is that there is no man in the box and therefore the question does not arise. Similarly, the answer to the question of whether the ego has free will or not is that there is no ego, and therefore the question does not arise. Therefore Bhagavan's usual response to the question would be to bid the questioner find out who it is that has free will or predestination. Disciple, has man any free will or is everything in his life predetermined? The same question as above, but the answer differs according to the needs of the questioner. In fact, if one does not bear in mind what has just been said about the unreality of the ego, it seems to be quite contradictory. Bhagavan, free will exists together with the individuality. As long as the individuality lasts, so long is there free will. All the scriptures are based on this fact and advise directing the free will in the right channel. Is this really a contradiction of the reply given earlier? No, because according to Bhagavan's teaching, individuality has only an illusory existence. So long as one imagines that one has a separate individuality, so long does one also imagine its free will. The two exist together inevitably. The problem of predestination and free will has always plagued philosophers and theologians and will always continue to do so, because it is insoluble on the plane of duality, that is, on the supposition of one being who is the creator and a lot of other separate beings who are created. If they have free will, then he is not omnipotent and omniscient. He does not know what will happen because it depends on what they decide. And he cannot control all happenings because they have the power to change them. On the other hand, if he is omniscient and omnipotent, he has foreknowledge of all that will happen and controls everything, and therefore they can have no power of decision, that is to say, no free will. But on the level of Advaita or non-duality, the problem fades out and ceases to exist. In truth, the ego has no free will because there is no ego. But on the level of apparent
my fucking
reality,
hand is
the
numb.
ego
Oh my god, we're at the
consists of free
fucking
will.
2 hour mark. Oh
It
my
is
god.
the illusion of free will that creates the illusion of the ego. That is what Bhagavan meant by saying that as long as the individuality lasts, so long is there free will. The next sentence in his answer turns the questioner away from theory to practice. Find out who it is who has free will or predestination and abide in that state. Then both are transcendent. That is the only purpose in discussing these questions. To whom do such questions present themselves? Discover that and be at peace. The only path of karma action, bhakti devotion, yoga and jhana knowledge is to inquire who it is who has the karma, vipakti lack of devotion, viyoga separation, and ajnana ignorance. Through this investigation, the ego disappears in the state of abundance in the self, in which none of these negative qualities ever existed, remains as the truth. As long as a man is the doer, he also reaps the fruits of his deeds. But as soon as he realizes the self through inquiry as to who the doer is, his sense of being the doer falls away, and the triple karma destiny is ended. This is the state of eternal liberation. Bhagavan said, "We are all really Satchit Ananda, being knowledge bliss, but we imagine that we are bound by destiny and have all this suffering." I asked him why we imagine this, why this state of ignorance, ajnana, comes over us. Bhagavan said, "Ask yourself to whom this ignorance has come, and you will discover that it never came to you, and that you always have been Satchit Ananda." One goes through all sorts of austerities to become what one already is. All effort is simply to get rid of the mistaken impression that one is limited and bound by the woes of samsara, this life. Disciple, is there predestination? And if what is destined to happen will happen, is there any use in prayer or effort, or should we just remain idle? This is a concise form of the question which Bhagavan was so often asked, and the reply is typical in that it does not expound theory but prescribes what to do. Bhagavan, there are only two ways in which to conquer destiny or be independent of it. One is to inquire who undergoes this destiny and discover that only the ego is bound by it and not the self, and that the ego is non-existent. The other way is to kill the ego by completely surrendering to the Lord, by realizing one's helplessness and saying all the time, "Not I, but thou, O my Lord," and giving up all sense of I and mine and leaving it to the Lord to do what he likes with you. Surrender can never be regarded as complete so long as the devotee wants this or that from the Lord. True surrender is love of God for the sake of love, and for nothing else, not even for the sake of salvation. In other words, complete effacement of the ego is necessary to conquer destiny, whether you achieve this effacement through self-inquiry or through bhakti marga. This mode of reply is common to spiritual teachers. I remember once reading the life of a Sufi saint, Abu Said, by Professor Nicholson, in which the learned author concluded that he seems to have taught predestination in theory but free will in practice. Puzzling as it may be for the philosopher, this is the attitude of all spiritual teachers, just as Christ affirmed that not even a sparrow can fall without the will of God, and that the very hairs on one's head are numbered, just as the Quran affirms that all knowledge and power are with God, and that he leads aright whom he will and leads astray whom he will. And yet both Christ and the Quran exhort men to right effort and condemn sin. Bhagavan was quite categorical that effort is necessary. In actual life, everyone realizes this, whatever theoretical view he may hold. A man makes the physical effort of putting the food in his mouth and eating. He does not say, "What is the use of eating if I am predestined to die of starvation?" He makes the mental effort of earning the money to buy food to eat. Why should he then apply a different logic when it comes to spiritual effort? A young man from Colombo, Ceylon, said to Bhagavan, "Krishnamurti teaches the method of effortless and choiceless awareness as distinct from that of deliberate concentration. Would Sri Bhagavan be pleased to explain how best to practice meditation and what form the object of meditation should take?" Bhagavan: effortless and choiceless awareness is our real nature. If we can attain that state and abide in it, that is all right. But one cannot reach it without effort, the effort of deliberate meditation. All the age-old Vasanas inherent tendencies turn the mind outwards to external objects. All such thoughts have to be given up and the mind turned inwards, and that, for most people, requires effort. Of course, every teacher and every book tells the aspirant to keep quiet, but it is not easy to do so. That is why all this effort is necessary. Even if we find somebody who has achieved this supreme state of stillness, you may take it that the necessary effort had already been made in a previous life. So effortless and choiceless awareness is attained only after deliberate meditation. That meditation can take whatever form most appeals to you. See what helps you to keep out all other thoughts and adopt that for your meditation. In this connection, Bhagavan quoted some verses from the great Tamil poet and saint Thayumanavar, the gist of which is as follows: "Bliss will ensue if you keep still, but however much you tell your mind this truth, it will not keep still. It is the mind that tells the mind to be still in order for it to attain bliss, but it will not do it. Though all the scriptures have said it, and though we hear it daily from the great ones and even from our Guru, we are never quiet but stray into the world of Maya illusion and sense objects. That is why conscious, deliberate effort is needed to attain that effortless state of stillness. Indeed, until the supreme, effortless state is attained, it is impossible for a man not to make effort. His own nature compels him to, just as Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita told Arjuna that his own nature would compel him to fight. Disciple, I want to be further enlightened. Should I try to make no effort at all? Bhagavan, now it is impossible for you to be without effort. When you go deeper, it is impossible for you to make effort. Disciple, what is the difference between meditation and samadhi, or absorption in the self? Bhagavan, meditation is initiated and sustained by a conscious effort of the mind. When such effort entirely subsides, it is called samadhi. Bhagavan, if you can keep still without engaging in any other pursuits, well and good. But if that cannot be done, what is the use of remaining inactive only with regard to realization? So long as you are obliged to be active, do not give up the attempt to realize the self. Meditation is a fight. As soon as you begin meditation, other thoughts will crowd together, gather force and try to overwhelm the single thought to which you try to hold. This thought must gradually gain strength by repeated practice. When it has grown strong, the other thoughts will be put to flight. This is the battle always going on in meditation. So long as the ego lasts, effort is necessary. When the ego ceases to exist, actions become spontaneous. No one succeeds without effort. Mind control is not your birthright. The few who succeed owe their success to their perseverance. Sometimes glimpses of realization are attained before it becomes permanent, and in such cases effort still continues to be necessary. Effort is necessary up to the state of realization. Even then, the self should spontaneously become evident, otherwise happiness will not be complete. Up to that state of spontaneity, there must be effort in some form or another. Sometimes right effort is referred to as a duty. Disciple, why should I try to get realization? I shall emerge from this state of illusion just as I wake up from a dream. We do not make any effort to get out of a dream when we are asleep. Bhagavan, in a dream you have no inkling that it is a dream, and therefore no obligation to make an effort to get out of it. But in this life you have some intuition based on your experience of sleep and on what you hear and read, that it is a sort of dream, and this intuition imposes on you the duty of making an effort to get out of it. However, who wants you to realize the self if you don't want to? If you prefer to be in this dream, stay as you are. Sometimes, however, as in the following very similar conversation, the seeker was reminded that even the effort is a part of the illusion of individual being. Disciple, it is said that our waking life is also a dream similar to our dream during sleep. But in our dreams we make no conscious effort to get rid of the dream and to wake up. The dream itself comes to an end without any effort on our part, and we become awake. Similarly, why shouldn't the waking state, which in reality is only another sort of dream, come to an end of its own accord without any effort on our part, and land us in realization or real awakening? Bhagavan, you're thinking that you have to make an effort to get rid of this dream of a waking state, and you're making efforts to attain realization or real awakening are all parts of the dream. When you attain realization, you will see there was neither the dream during sleep nor the waking state, but only yourself in your real state. Sometimes the question took the form of apparent conflict not between effort and destiny, but between effort and grace. For there were those who asked what use effort was if realization was dependent on the grace of God or cure. In one form or another, this doubt tends to arise in any religion, as in the Christian dispute whether salvation is due to grace or good works. Really, as the following quotations show, there is no conflict between the two. Visitor, it is said that only those who are chosen for self-realization obtain it. That is rather discouraging. Bhagavan, that only means that we cannot attain realization of the self by our own mind, unaided by Goddess grace. I interposed. Bhagavan also says that even that grace does not come arbitrarily, but because one has deserved it by one's own efforts either in this life or in previous ones. Visitor, but human effort is said to be useless. So what incentive has a man to improve himself? I asked where it was said that you should make no effort, or that effort was useless, and the visitor pointed to the passage in Who Am I?, where it says that since the indefinable power of the Lord ordains, sustains, and controls everything, we need not worry what we shall do. I pointed out that what is deprecated there is not human effort, but the feeling I am the doer. I asked Bhagavan whether my explanation was not right, and he approved of it. Disciple, grace is necessary for the removal of ignorance. Bhagavan, certainly. But grace is there all along. Grace is the self. It is not something to be acquired. All that is necessary is to know its existence. In the same way, the sun is pure brightness. It does not know darkness, although others speak of darkness fleeing away on its approach. But darkness, ignorance, is a phantom, not real. Because of its unreality, it is said to be removed when its unreality is discovered.
Bro, did I
The
just
sun
finish
is there
this
and
shit?
shines, and you are surrounded by sunlight. Still, if you would know the sun, you must turn your eyes in its direction and look at it. Similarly, grace is only to be found by effort, although it is here and now. Disciple, by the desire to surrender, increasing grace is experienced, I hope. Bhagavan, surrender once and for all and be done
Dude,
with
no
the
way, did
desire.
I just finish that shit?
So
What the
long as
fuck?
the sense of being the doer remains, desire does also. Therefore, the ego remains. But once this goes, the self shines forth in its purity. The sense of
Dude,
being
I
the
just
doer
finished
is
it. What the
bondage,
fuck?
not the actions themselves. Be still and know that I am God. Here, stillness is total surrender without a vestige
But the
of
actual shot
individuality.
is gonna be like this.
Stillness will prevail, and there will be no agitation of the mind. Agitation of mind is the cause of desire, of the sense of being the doer, of personality. If that is stopped, there is quiet. In this sense, knowing means being. It is not relative knowledge involving the triads of knower, knowledge, and known. Disciple, but one may not be quite sure of God as grace. Bhagavan, if the unright mind does not feel God as grace, it does
That's
not mean
crazy.
that this is absent, for that would imply that God is at times not gracious, that is to say, ceases to be God. Disciple, is that the same as the saying of Christ, according to thy faith be it done unto thee. Bhagavan, quite so. Disciple, the Upanishads say, I am told that he alone knows the Atman whom the Atman chooses. Why should the Atman choose at all? If it
That's
chooses, why is a
crazy.
particular person?
I think all I gotta do is
Bhagavan,
close the
when
hands
sun
and then I'm
rises,
good.
some buds blossom, not all. Do you blame the sun for that? Nor can the bud blossom of itself. It requires the sunlight to enable it to do so. Disciple, may we not say that the help of the Atman is needed because it is the Atman that drew over itself the veil of Maya? Bhagavan, you may say so. Disciple, if the Atman has drawn the veil over itself, should it not itself remove the veil? Bhagavan, it will. But who complains of being veiled? Ask yourself that. Disciple, why should I? Let the Atman itself remove the veil. Bhagavan, if the Atman complains about the veil, then the Atman will remove it. Disciple, if the Supreme Being is omnipresent as he is said to be, his realization ought to be an easy thing. The scriptures, however, declare that without his grace the Lord cannot even be worshipped, much less realized. So then, how can the individual by his own effort realize the self or the Supreme Being, except through his grace? Bhagavan, there was never a time when the Supreme Being was unknown or unrealized, because he is one and identical with the self. His grace or anugraha is the same as the conscious immediacy of his divine presence, prasanada, in other words, enlightenment or revelation. One's ignorance of this self-revealing immediacy of divine grace is no
Fucking
proof
shit.
to the contrary. If the owl does not see the sun that illumines the whole world, is that the fault of the sun? Is it not due to the defectiveness of the bird's sight? Similarly, if the ignorant man is unaware of the ever-luminous Atman or self, can that be attributed to the nature of the Atman itself? Is it not the result of his own ignorance? The Supreme Lord is eternal grace. Therefore, there is really no such individual act as bestowing grace. And being ever present, the manifestation of grace is not confined to any particular period or occasion. Turning to God and desiring his grace is itself grace. Disciple, doubts keep arising. That is why I ask how it is to be done. Bhagavan, a doubt arises and it is cleared. Another arises and that is cleared only to make way for another, and so it goes on. So there is no possibility of clearing away all doubts. Find out instead to whom the doubts come. Go to their source and stay there. Then they cease to arise. That is how doubts are to be cleared away. Disciple, only grace can help me do it. Bhagavan, grace is not something outside you. In fact, your very desire for grace is due to grace that is already working in you. Grace is represented alike as the grace of God or Guru. Disciple, isn't success dependent on the grace of the Guru? Bhagavan, yes, but isn't your practice itself due to such grace? Its fruits spring from it automatically. There is a stanza in Kivalya which runs, O Guru, you have always been with me, watching over me, one incarnation after another, and have shaped my course until I was liberated. The self manifests externally as the Guru when occasion demands. Otherwise, he always remains within, doing what is required. Visitor, in actual practice, I find I cannot succeed in my efforts unless Bhagavan's grace descends on me. Bhagavan, the Guru's grace is always there. You imagine it to be something somewhere high up in the sky that has to descend, but really it is inside you, in your heart, and the moment you effect the subsidence or merging of the mind into its source by whatever method, the grace rushes forth, spouting as from a spring within you. Chapter 3, Life in the World. Once anyone decided to proceed from theory to practice on the basis of Bhagavan's teachings, the question was apt to arise how that affected his life in the world. Hinduism does not necessarily enjoin physical renunciation for active spiritual seekers, as did, for instance, the original teaching of Christ or Buddha. On the contrary, the state of the householder is honored and the path of right action is a legitimate path. In fact, the classical system in ancient India was that a man should retire into the homeless state only after he had fulfilled his duties as a householder and had an adult son or sons to replace him. However, the doctrine of non-duality, together with the path of self-inquiry to be described in a later chapter, which is based on it, has been traditionally recognized as suitable to the world renouncer. It was therefore natural that Bhagavan's followers often asked him whether they should renounce the world. At the same time, it was a remarkable indication of the amount of spiritual determination which still remains in modern India. For renouncing the world does not mean living a solitary life in a little house and garden of one's own, as it might in the West, or even retiring to the austere security of a monastery, but going forth homeless and penniless,
I think the world.
I'm dead.
And that's freeload top 50.
What's going on?
The charitable for food and clothing and sleeping in a cave or temple or wherever possible. It does sometimes happen in modern times that a sadhu accepts a small grant from his family, enough to buy food and the simplest clothing, but even so, it is a bare, hard life. Nevertheless, there were constant requests to be allowed to take this life and constantly back. Whether you continue in the household or renounce it and go to live in the forest, your mind haunts you. The ego is the source of thought. It creates the body and the world and makes you think of being a householder. If you renounce, it will only substitute the thought of renunciation for that of the family and the environment of the forest for that of the household.
I actually
The
want to
mental
move this.
obstacles are always there for you. They even increase greatly in the new surroundings. Change of environment is no help. The one obstacle is the mind, and this must be overcome whether in the home or in the forest. If you can do it in the forest, why not in the home? So why change the environment? Your efforts can be made even now, whatever be the environment. Disciple, is it possible to enjoy samadhi while busy with worldly work? Bhagavan, it is the feeling I work that is the hindrance. Ask yourself, who works? Remember who you are. Then the work will not bind you. It will go on automatically. Make no effort either to work or to renounce. Your effort is the bondage. What is destined to happen will happen. If you are destined to work, you will not be able to avoid it. You will be forced to engage in it. So leave it to the higher power. It is not really your choice whether you renounce or retain. When women carrying jars of water on their heads stop to talk, they are very careful, keeping their mind on the water jars. Similarly, when a sage engages in activity, his mind remains fixed in the self and his activity does not distract him. Disciple, I believe celibacy is necessary even for a householder if he is to succeed in self-inquiry. Am I right? Bhagavan, first find out who the wife and husband are. Then the question will not arise. Disciple, isn't brahmacharya celibacy necessary for realization of the self? Bhagavan, brahmacharya means living in Brahman. It has no connection with celibacy as commonly understood. A real brahmachari is one who lives in Brahman and finds bliss in Brahman, which is the same as the self. Why then should he look for other sources of happiness? In fact, it is emergence from the self that is the cause of all misery. Disciple, but isn't celibacy necessary for yoga? Bhagavan, it is one aid to realization among many others. Disciple, then is it not indispensable? Can a married man realize the self? Bhagavan, certainly. It is a question of fitness of mind. Married or unmarried, a man can realize the self because the self is here and now. If it were not, but were obtainable by some effort at some future time, if it were something new to be acquired,
Okay.
it would not be worth seeking because what
You
is
know
not
what? Yeah, that's pretty
natural
much
cannot
done.
be
I'm
permanent.
finna.
What I say is that the self is here and now and that it alone is. Disciple, is it necessary to take sannyasa, a vow of renunciation, in order to attain self-realization? Bhagavan, sannyasa means renouncing one's individuality, not shaving one's head and putting on ochre robes. A man may be a householder, but if he does not think he is one, he is a sannyasin. On the other hand, he may wear ochre robes and wander about, but so long as he thinks he is a sannyasin, he is not one. To think about one's renunciation defeats the purpose of renouncing. What do you mean by taking sannyasa? Do you think it means leaving your home or wearing robes of a certain color? Wherever you go, even if you fly up into the air, will your mind not go with you? Or can you leave it behind you and go without it? Why should your occupation or duties in life interfere with your spiritual effort? For instance, there is a difference between your activities at home and in the office. In your office activities, you are detached, and so long as you do your duty, you do not care what happens or whether it results in gain or loss to the employer. Your duties at home, on the other hand, are performed with attachment, and you are all the time anxious whether they will bring advantage to you and your family. But it is possible to perform all the activities of life with detachment and regard only the self as real. It is wrong to suppose that if one is fixed in the self, one's duties in life will not be properly performed. It is like an actor. He dresses and acts and even feels the part he is playing, but he knows really that he is not that character, but someone else in real life. In the same way, why should the body consciousness or the feeling I am the body disturb you once you know for certain that you are not the body but the self? Nothing that the body does should shake you from abidance in the self. Such abidance will never interfere with the proper and effective discharge of whatever duties the body has, any more than an actor S being aware of his real status in life interferes with his acting a part on the stage. Disciple, it has been definitely stated that so long as there is the least trace of the I am the doer idea, there can be no realization. But is it possible for a householder who earnestly desires liberation to fulfill his duties without this idea? Bhagavan, there is no principle that actions can be performed only on the basis of the I am the doer idea, and therefore there is no reason to ask whether they can be performed and the duties discharged without that idea. To take a common example, an accountant working all day in his office and scrupulously attending to his duties might seem to the spectator to be shouldering all the financial responsibilities of the institution. But knowing that he is not personally affected by the or outgoings, he remains unattached and free from the I am the doer feeling in doing his work, while at the same time he does it perfectly well. In the same way, it is quite possible for the wise householder who earnestly seeks liberation to discharge his duties in life which, after all, are his destiny without any attachment, merely as an instrument for the purpose. Such activity is not an obstacle.
Damn, I can't believe I did it. What the
nor
fuck?
does knowledge prevent a man from discharging his duties in life. Knowledge and activity are never mutually antagonistic, and the realization of one does not impede performance of the other, nor performance of one the realization of the other. Disciple, what is the significance of the life of a spiritually minded householder who has to devote all his time merely to earning a living and supporting his family, and what mutual benefit do they get? Bhagavan, the discharge of his duties by a householder such as this, who works for the support of his family, quite unmindful of his own physical comforts in life, should be regarded as selfless service rendered to his family, whose needs it is his destiny to meet. It may, however, be asked what benefits such a householder derives from the family. The answer is that there is no benefit for him from the family as such, since he has made the discharge of his duties to them a means of spiritual training, and since he finally obtains perfect contentment by realizing the supreme bliss of liberation, which is the ultimate goal of every path and the supreme reward. He therefore stands in need of nothing from the members of his family or from his family life. Disciple, how can a householder who is constantly engaged in the active discharge of his domestic duties, which should naturally impel him to still greater activity, obtain the supreme peace of withdrawal and freedom from the urge to such activity even while thus busily engaged? Bhagavan, it is only to the spectator that the enlightened householder seems to be occupied with his domestic duties. For even though apparently engaged in domestic duties, he is not really engaged in any activity at all. His outer activity does not prevent him from realizing the perfect peace of withdrawal, and he is free from the restless urge to activity even in the midst of his activities. Visitor, should I retire from business and take to reading books on Vedanta? Bhagavan, if objects have an independent existence, that is, if they exist somewhere apart from you, then it may be possible for you to retire from them. But they do not. They owe their existence to you, to your thought, so where can you retire from them? As for reading books on Vedanta, You can go on reading any number, but they can only tell you to realize the self within you. The self cannot be found in books. You have to find it for yourself in yourself. Disciple, is a vow of silence useful? Bhagavan, the inner silence is self-surrender, and that means living without the sense of ego. Disciple, is solitude necessary for a sannyasin? Bhagavan, solitude is in the mind of a man. One man may be in the thick of the world and yet maintain perfect serenity of mind. Such a person is always in solitude. Another may live in the forest but still be unable to control his mind. He cannot be said to be in solitude. Solitude is an attitude of the mind. A man attached to the things of life cannot get solitude wherever he may be, whereas a detached man is always in solitude. As this implies, Bhagavan did not approve of a vow of silence, such as people sometimes take in order to create a sort of solitude in society. The real silence, he taught, is a still mind. If the mind is active, there is no benefit in not speaking. What is needed is to control both thought and speech. The silence of solitude is forced. Restrained speech in society is equivalent to silence, for then a man controls his speech. There must be a speaker before there can be speech. The mind of the speaker is engaged, otherwise, speech is restrained. When the mind is turned inwards, it is active in a different way and is not anxious to speak. The purpose of a vow of silence is to limit the mental activities provoked by speech, but if the mind is controlled, this is unnecessary and silence becomes natural. Until the mind is ripe to do so, it is not even possible to give up activity. Disciple, how does activity help? Doesn't it simply increase the already heavy load upon us that we have to get rid of? Bhagavan, action performed unselfishly purifies the mind and helps it to fix
we had
itself
to get
in
this
meditation.
motherfucking shit out the
Disciple,
way.
but suppose one were to meditate constantly without activity. Bhagavan, try and see. Your inherent tendencies will not let you. Meditation only comes step by step with their gradual weakening by the grace of the Guru. Even in the case of one who had fulfilled his destiny as a householder and having grown up children to take his place, could have renounced the world according to the classical Indian tradition, Bhagavan still did not give his sanction. Disciple, I have no pleasure in my family. There remains nothing for me to do there. I have done what has to be done, and now there are grandsons and granddaughters in the house. Should I remain there, or should I leave it and go away? Bhagavan, you should stay just where you are now. But where are you now? Are you in the house, or is the house in you? Is there any house apart from you? If you become established in your own place, you will find that all things have merged into you, and such questions will become unnecessary. Disciple, then it seems I am to remain at home. Bhagavan, you are to remain in your true state. Sometimes the Maharishi was asked why he himself renounced the world and went forth to the homeless life, if he did not approve of that path for his followers, and he replied merely that such was his destiny. It is to be remembered that the path he taught, the use of self-inquiry in the life of the world, combined with harmonious
Dude, I cannot
action,
believe I just did this.
is
Holy
a new path
fuck,
created
bro.
by him to meet the needs of our time. He himself had to be established in realization before he could establish the path thereto. Disciple, can I engage in
This is what it looks
spiritual
like.
practice even while remaining in the life of the world? Bhagavan, yes, certainly, one ought to do so. Disciple, isn't life in the world a hindrance? Don't all the books advocate renunciation? Bhagavan, the world is only in the mind. It does not speak out saying, I am the world. If it did, it would have to be always present even in your sleep. Since it is not present in sleep, it is impermanent. Being impermanent, it has no reality. Having no reality, it is easily subdued by the self. The self alone is permanent. Renunciation is non-identification of the self with the non-self. On the disappearance of ignorance, the non-self ceases to exist. That is true renunciation. Disciple, why then did you leave your home in your youth? Bhagavan, that was my prarabdha destiny. One's course of conduct in this life is determined by one's prarabdha. My prarabdha lies this way, yours lies that way. Disciple, should I not also renounce? Bhagavan, if that had been your prarabdha, the question would not have arisen. Disciple, then I take it that I should remain in the world and engage in spiritual practice. But if I do so, can I obtain realization in this life? Bhagavan, this has already been answered. You are always the self.
This nigga's hilarious.
Never fail. Success is bound to result. With many European and some Indian visitors, it was the opposite question that arose. Not whether they should renounce the world, but what they could do to help it. Being in the world, but not of it, following the inner spiritual quest while outwardly conforming to the conditions of life, seemed to them too much of a withdrawal, not too little. To some extent, Bhagavan's answers varied according to the understanding of the questioner. If the latter was capable of spiritual understanding, he would turn him inwards. Disciple, why is the world enveloped in ignorance? Bhagavan, look after yourself and let the world look after itself. What is yourself? If you are the body, there is a physical world also. But if you are the spirit, there is only spirit. Visitor, what do you think about social reform? Bhagavan, self-reform automatically results in social reform. Attentive self-reform and social reform will take care of itself. However, people who raise this sort of objection were more often of a devotional temperament, such as requires worship in a dualistic religion, and in such cases, Bhagavan would enjoin submission to God. All that is required is to submit to God and do one's duty, play one's part in life, with full confidence. That is all that is asked of one. One is not responsible for the outcome. Bhagavan, now, I will ask you a question. When a man gets into a train, where does he put his luggage disciple? Either in the compartment or in the luggage van. Bhagavan, he doesn't he carry it on his head or in his lap while in the train. Disciple, only a fool would do so. Bhagavan, it is 1,000 times more foolish to bear your own burden once you have undertaken a spiritual quest, whether by the path of knowledge or devotion. Disciple, but can I relinquish all my responsibilities, all my commitments? Bhagavan, you remember the temple tower? There are many statues on it. Aren't there? Well, there are 4 big ones at the base, one at each corner.
Yeah, we did it.
Disciple,
We did
yes.
it. We did it.
Bhagavan, well, I tell you that the huge tower is supported by these 4 statues. Disciple, how is that possible? What does Bhagavan mean? Bhagavan, I mean that to say that is no more foolish than saying that you bear all the cares, burdens, and responsibilities of life. The Lord of the universe bears the whole burden. You only imagine that you do. You can hand over all your burdens to him. Whatever you have to do, you will be made an instrument for doing it at the right time. Do not imagine that you cannot do it unless you have the desire to. It is not desire that gives you the necessary strength. Strength is the Lord's. Sometimes there was a more pressing anxiety about the state of the world and a desire to assume responsibility. Disciple, will Bhagavan give his opinion on the future of the world as we are living in critical times? Bhagavan, why should you worry about the future? You don't even know the present properly. Take care of the present and the future will take care of itself. Disciple, will the world soon enter a new era of friendliness and mutual help, or will it go down in chaos and war? Bhagavan, there is one who governs the world, and it is his task to look after it. He who has given life to the world knows how to look after it also. He bears the burden of this world, not you. Disciple, yet if one looks round with unprejudiced eyes, it is hard to see where this benevolent care comes in. Bhagavan, as you are, so is the world. Without understanding yourself, what is the use of trying to understand the world? This is a question that seekers after truth need not worry about. People waste their energy over all such questions. First, find out the truth behind yourself. Then you will be in a better position to understand the truth behind the world of which you are a part. Another visitor asked Bhagavan for a benedictory foreword to a book he had written called The Destiny of the Freedom or something of that sort. He said that someone else had already agreed to write an introduction, but he would be grateful if Bhagavan would write a few words conveying his message and blessing. Bhagavan explained to him that he had never done such a thing and therefore should not be expected to now. The visitor persisted, and I went to some trouble to convince him that all his persuasion would be in vain. Then he began saying that the world badly needs a spiritual message, and that the youth of India and of the world are not properly brought up, since religion is not instilled into them, and so forth. I had to tell him that Bhagavan holds that before a man tries to reform the world, he should first know himself, and then he can go about reforming the world if he still feels so inclined. I believe the visitor was for continuing the argument, but fortunately it was time for the Parayanam recital of the Vedas, and he was effectively stopped thereby. Disciple, should I try to help the suffering world? Bhagavan, the power that created you created the world as well. If God created the world, it is his business to look after it, not yours. Nevertheless, this does not mean that Bhagavan as teaching condoned coldness or callousness to human suffering. Those who were in distress had to be helped, only they had to be helped in a spirit of humanity. What was forbidden was only the self-importance inherent in trying to act the part of providence. This is made very clear in the following passage. Disciple, but we see pain in the world. A man is hungry. It is a physical reality. It is very real to him. Are we to call it a dream and remain unmoved by his suffering? Bhagavan, from the point of view of jhana or reality, the suffering you speak of is certainly a dream. This is the world in which that suffering is an infinitesimal part. In a dream you have when you are asleep, you yourself feel hunger and see others also suffering from hunger. You feed yourself and, moved by pity, feed the others who are hungry. So long as the dream lasted, all this suffering was quite as real as the suffering you see in the world is to you now. It was only when you woke up that you discovered it to be unreal. You might have eaten heartily before going to sleep, but you still dreamt that you had been working hard in the hot sun all day and were tired and hungry. Then you woke up and found that your stomach was full and that you had not stirred from your bed. But all this is not to say that while you are in the dream you can act as if the suffering you feel in it is not real. The hunger in the dream has to be appeased by dream food. The fellow beings you find hungry in the dream have to be provided with dream food. You can never mix the two states, the dream and the waking state. Similarly, till you attain the state of realization and thus wake out of this illusory, phenomenal world, you must do social service by relieving suffering whenever you see it. But even so, you must do it without ahankara, that is, without the sense of, it is I who am doing it. Instead, you should feel, I am the Lord's instrument. Similarly, you must not be conceited and think, I am helping a man who is below me. He needs help and I am in a position to give it. I am superior and he is inferior. You must help him ascend means of worshiping God in him. All such service is serving the self, not anybody else. You are not helping anybody else, but only yourself. In general, Bhagavan discouraged political activity among those dedicated to the quest. Disciple, is it not our duty to be patriots? Bhagavan, it is your duty to be and not to be this or that. I am that I am sums up the whole of the truth. The method is summarized in Be Still. However, when people who were engaged in political life approached him, he would simply advise them to carry on in a spirit of service and surrender, seeking to eliminate all egoism from their work. Disciple is the desire for Swaraj independence right. Bhagavan, such desire no doubt begins with self-interest. Yet practical work for the goal gradually widens the outlook so that the individual becomes merged in the country. Such merging of the individuality is desirable, and the karma in question is nishkama, unselfish. Disciple, if self-government for India is granted after a long struggle and terrible sacrifice, is one not justified in being pleased with the result and elated by it? Bhagavan, in the course of one's work, one must have surrendered oneself to the higher power whose might must be kept in mind and never lost sight of. How then can one be elated? One should not even care for the result of one's action. Then alone the karma becomes unselfish. Gandhiji has surrendered himself to the divine and works accordingly with no self-interest. He does not concern himself with the results, but accepts them as they turn up. That must be the attitude of national workers. Question, will the work be crowned with success? Bhagavan, this question arises because the questioner has not surrendered himself. Question, should we then not think of and work for the welfare of the country? Bhagavan, first take care of yourself and the rest will naturally follow. Question, I am not speaking individually but for the country. Bhagavan, first surrender and then see. Doubts arise because of the absence of surrender. Acquire strength by surrender, and then your surrounding will be found to have improved to the degree of strength acquired by you. Persons whose temperament drew them to activity and who found it hard to understand that spiritually there are no others, queried whether there was not some egoism in seeking their own realization, not understanding that the very expression their own did not apply, and that not merely egoism, but the ego itself had to be renounced. Bhagavan himself was asked why he did not go about preaching to the people. Disciple, why doesn't Sri Bhagavan go about preaching the truth to the people at large? Bhagavan, how do you know that I don't? Does preaching consist in mounting a platform and haranguing the people around? Preaching is simple communication of knowledge and can be done in silence too. What do you think of a man listening to a harangue for an hour and going away without being impressed by it so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in a holy presence and leaves after some time with his outlook on life totally changed. Which is better, to preach loudly without effect or to sit silently sending forth intuitive force to act on others? Again, how does speech arise? First, there is abstract knowledge unmanifest.
I think I'm done.
From this there arises the ego which gives rise to thoughts and words successively. So then, abstract knowledge down arrow ego, down arrow thoughts, down arrow words, words therefore are the great grandsons of the original source. If words can produce an effect, consider how much more powerful preaching